right. Welcome to the Return to Play seasonal meeting that we have. We're going to do winter games in basketball, just knowing that both these seasons start practice about the same time. I wanted to go through those with everybody, but we are going to get started with our friend Tyler from development. He's going to touch base a little bit what's going on with the polar plunges this year.
Yeah, hopefully everybody can hear me. Hey everyone, my name is Tyler. For those who don't know me, I'm the Region 8 Director of Development and Special Events. So it's a pleasure to see all of you, and thanks for all your support. Just gonna take a minute or two of your time to kind of plug Polar Plunge here, being that it's our largest fundraiser of the year. If you didn't already know, registration is open. You can visit our website. The pledge page is up. There's 8 different locations throughout the state this year, and of course, along with our virtual option as well. So feel free to check that out. We have location dates ranging from February 5th through March 5th. So there's a pretty good month window there. It's important to note that the fundraising ends March 6th. So make sure you get all your money in for any incentives via Polar Plunge or Team Wisconsin. Thanks, Brittany, for putting that up there. And then, so just to kind of go through some of the incentive levels. If you don't already know, the $75 to participate includes the event shirt, but after that, we'll have a hat, towel, a sweatshirt. We'll have a Visa gift card for those who hit the $1,000 threshold, and then if you hit 2,000, it's all of those items. Those items are up on the website, so you can take a look to kind of see what they look like. It's a pretty cool design as we kind of get back into the traditional plunge. So we're gonna be in that icy cold water, so that's kind of exciting. If you're able to, matching gifts are an option. If you do that program, let us know. There is an additional gift there for that. It's a stadium blanket, which is pretty nice. So just kind of give us a heads up when we go through that process. Local programs, you receive 20% back. You can still do the virtual option, so that's still all out there. We have the cool schools option as well. The tools, tips, FAQs, the donation forms or receipts that I talked about the matching gifts. Those are all on the Pledge website, and you can access that at any time. If you need any help with that, please let myself, Jason, Don, anybody else and know, and we can help you out. After that, kind of just spread the word, and if you have any questions, just let me know.
Great, and we can take questions. If you want to write them in the chat, we can go ahead and do that throughout this meeting, whether it's Polar Plunge or is the next any of the other topics we're talking about. Otherwise, we'll try to, if you raise your hand, we can try to find you on video, but sometimes it's easier just to go through the chat stuff too. So anybody have anything for Polar Plunge before we move on to Brittany and fitness? All right. Thanks, Tyler, for jumping on. And as always, you can feel free to reach out to Tyler. If you reach out to one of us, we can always direct you to the right person when it comes to Polar Plunge stuff. Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, Brittany.
Hi, everyone. I just have a couple of updates. One being next week, we are hosting a virtual family health forum. It'll be Wednesday. So that's the 15th at 7:30. I'm actually just going to put a quick link to our events calendar. It will be on stress reduction tips. So a lot of the different tips that we go through in the Healthy Athlete Discipline Strong Minds. We'll have both of our Strong Minds clinical directors on the call leading us through those. So athletes are welcome. Families are highly encouraged to join. It should be a good time. So mark the date on the calendar. On the link, the Zoom link is directly on there, but there's also a link to sign up if you want to receive a reminder email. I'll send a reminder that morning. Secondly, we are participating in a fitness challenge through SONA in conjunction with USA Games. So all of our USA Games delegates will be participating in a fitness challenge. And we are extra special in that we're participating in a research study. So we are recruiting non-USA Games athletes to join us in this fitness challenge. We are partnering with UW Whitewater to help us with this. So they'll be the ones doing all the data collection and everything like that. So what I ask of all of you is if you are in regions 6, 7, or 8 and are interested in participating or at least learning more, maybe shoot me a message in the chat. I'll reach out to you. The challenge itself runs from January 10th through May 29th. And the great part is if it's not an incentive enough to participate in fitness, every athlete will be getting a Fitbit. This will help with some of the data collection that's needed, but then they'll also be able to keep that going forward to use after the challenge is over. And we're also hopefully working on an incentive for our coaches that are going to help me recruit the athletes, but that's still kind of figuring out what that looks like. So if you're at all interested, just shoot me a message. I'll probably be reaching out to those that have filled out an intent to play for basketball, just as a starting base. But if you're interested, just let me know. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Brittany. Anybody have any question about anything that Brittany had brought up for fitness? Otherwise, she will be on this for the remainder of the meeting, so she can answer some stuff in the chat as well, and at the end as well too. So as we get going, so the first piece, like we always would lead off these meetings, is looking at the map. I'm going to show you a different map this week, and I'll kind of go through some of the things that we're working through on our side of things. So we had previously used the Wisconsin Department of Health website and their map. We had an issue come about mid-November where the data on that website stopped updating. It stopped dating on the 15th of November for a bit. And so the website I'm going to show you is the Washington Post website, which is this Washington Post website is one that it was recommended from Special Olympics Incorporated when the protocols initially came out. So can you guys see my screen? Okay. So the Washington Post website will, like I said, SOI had used this as their recommendation. We had used the Wisconsin Department of Health website as ours, mainly because we had previously been using that website. The maps were a little bit easier to use, and the data was about this was right about the same for both of them. And really, from what we're collecting is that this Washington Post website pulls from the Wisconsin Department of Health for their data. So it all kind of interlinks within itself. On the 15th, the Wisconsin Department of Health website stopped updating, but the Washington Post website continued to update, which is how we kind of had to switch last minute on the bowling, figure out numbers for that, which is this Washington Post number. One of the reasons why that delay happened was that the Wisconsin Department of Health was updating their, they had a maintenance on the website. And so the website had updated now as of yesterday, but there's a little gap, like a 4-day gap in data. And so the Washington Post one's more accurate right now. So we're just asking you to be a little bit patient with us as we kind of go through this 4-day period where they didn't have any data released. The Washington Post, what they did is they dumped all of the data into one day yesterday for those 4 days, and we're not quite sure what the Wisconsin Department of Health did. So we're working between those, but we feel like in a week everything's going to get cleared up, which I know this is a lot of information, and I don't know if I've been super clear on it, but this is the first time that we've had something like this since we've been monitoring numbers for about a year and a half. And it looks like it's because of a maintenance to the information, maintenance to the website, which is what caused the delay in information. So this is the map that's on the Washington Post one. And like I said, we're going to wait a week and see if the Wisconsin Department of Health catches up. If it doesn't, then we'll share this link for where you're at. We can share the link anyways, but we're going to try to use the old map if we can. On this map, if you hover over counties, you can see what the data is per 100,000. That's that bottom lower box by county. And so this is kind of one of those ways that we've been evaluating county programs and their ability to practice, and our athletic directors have been notifying has been based on these numbers since the 15th of November. This website has a lot of information on it. I'll just kind of pull it up from scratch here. If you pull up the website, you're going to scroll down quite a bit. It will give you information as far as cases, which just is our chart. You can do it by data from the entire United States, and then you can scroll down to state, which is what we've done. And then these charts will do that, so that when we talk about the gap, you can look here. It'll tell you how many cases were reported. So it was 0 cases reported over the weekend, and then we had 1 reported on Tuesday, and then all of a sudden they dumped like 14,000 cases on Wednesday, which is where I think they corrected their information. We've been averaging about 5-ish, so that was about 3 days worth of data. So that's how we kind of keep to that conclusion. But you have information by county for total reported cases for 100,000, which is what we look for. So you can even look at the number straight up. Or if you keep scrolling towards the bottom, that's where the United States map will pop up. So you can see that. You can see the state data as a total. And then if you click in, that's where the county stuff comes up. Like I said, I pulled up the website we had been using for, I'll refresh it, that we had been using previously. If you click on any of the counties, you can see it was updated as of 12/8, but we've noticed these numbers are significantly lower than the Washington Post one. And I think part of that is that they just didn't put in the retroactive numbers like the Washington Post did for there. So that's why we're kind of watching both of them for about a week to see if it evens out like it was before. And then if it doesn't, then we'll make sure we update you on which one we're using moving forward. So again, a little bit more in depth on the maps than we normally are. But as you can kind of see, as we were scrolling through numbers on the Washington Post map, we have a lot of programs that are over the 50 number that we need to be at in order to have practices and participate in competitions. That kind of spiked a little bit after the Thanksgiving weekend, which I think was pretty similar to last year too. A lot of times when we're forced to go inside, and then there's family gatherings and all that type of stuff. That was the trend last year, and we're kind of seeing a similar trend this year. And so hopefully that makes it a little bit more predictable as far as how we can do programming, but just something that we're going to keep an eye on as we keep going, that type of stuff. So right now, what I would just say is we've made the determinations or sent out the information for programs based on what the practices look like for the next week. We just probably want to hold on to those numbers for the next week, and we will recheck on Wednesday. And by Wednesday, all of the maintenance stuff should be cleared, and then we can be able to check it more daily like we had been previously. So just kind of be patient with us as we kind of make sure that we have the right data that we're using for all of this information on that type of stuff. So that's just kind of a real quick update on the numbers and the map. Like I said, as a state, we're over 50, but we've just made the decision to go county by county, just knowing that things are, it's better to go off of that number as far as determining programs, especially since we no longer do the petitioning thing. It's either you're practicing or whatever, based on your county numbers, protocols, or you're not. And so that's kind of where we're at with that. So moving on to winter games.
Hey, Jason.
Yeah.
Hey, is there a certain time of day that we should be checking that website? I mean, because yesterday morning I checked it and it was 44, and then somebody else checked it and it was 69 in the afternoon. Is there a certain time that we should be checking that?
So I know the Wisconsin Department of Health one always listed it at 2 p.m., but it also meant that they could have updated the information at 8 in the morning, and it would say that it was updated last at 2 p.m. I would say I would recommend waiting until later in the day, just because that gives the opportunity for that day's numbers to be updated. So I would say probably closer to that 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon would be my best guess for the day. And like I like to point out, this last week has been a really weird one because of this maintenance issue that we've had, and we've been monitoring it. I mean, you can ask the athletic directors. I sent a message one moment of like, hey, we dropped 30% or whatever it was, and then it was like, oh, never mind. The data is not matching, and then all of a sudden, like an hour later, it finally caught up to itself in the system. So that's why we're kind of being patient for this next week of what that's kind of look like. And my assumption is when you saw that, our best guess is when you saw that lower number, it was the data catching up where the reported cases by county was off. And then they did this dump yesterday and it kind of fixed it for the 7-day average currently. And so that's why we're going to use that day's data. And then in a week, this should all hopefully be cleared over, but we're going to keep monitoring it. And if neither of them seem to be catching up correctly, then we're going to find something that we can get that resource that is going to be accurate for everybody. So this is like I said, it's a weird time. Of course, it's the week that we have this meeting. Of course, it's a week that we're starting practices and all that type of stuff. But we're gonna keep doing our best to try to understand the math behind it and make sure that we're giving you the most accurate data that we can. So.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. I said moving on to throw questions in. We'll answer questions at the end too as we go through some of this stuff. One big change for Winter Games, we are moving the medical deadline for Winter Games to February 1st. Typically it's been before that. So February 1st for this year, we're doing the medical deadline. Gives a little bit of an opportunity for some of those athletes to get updated medicals in. Just like everything else, we're working on planning for Winter Games within the protocols. Just like right now, if we're over 50 or programs are over 50, that would mean that we would look at cancellation or not having those programs come. The way we've set that up is that we make that call the Wednesday prior to the competition. I know we will work with, and I'll get to the hotel side of things, that may just be adjusted based on, I know when people can cancel rooms. I know that's a big thing for Winter Games. So if that date is further out than that Wednesday prior, then maybe we will adjust that to make sure that people don't get stuck with rooms they can't use if we were to cancel. But we'll update that once we get final hotel information on that type of thing. But for the most likely scenario, based on the fact that where we are as a state currently and where the majority of our counties are, if we're going to have the event, it's probably going to be in the 15 to 50 range, and that high risk level, the orange protocols that we have for COVID. And so with doing that, outdoor activities would still require a mask. Would still be requiring a mask, even unless they're during competition, unless they're during cardiovascular activities. It would also involve the pre-event screening that the local program managers or coaches would do and turn in at registration, asking those questions about the COVID-related questions, and those would be turned in. If that's the case, and we're between 15 and 50 for that 7-day average of confirmed cases per 100,000 people, we would likely not be able to do the indoor activities that normally happen with Winter Games, like the dinner, the dance, and the ski awards. The reasoning behind that is that we're limited to 50 people for indoor activities during that range. So what we would look at is a plan B for how do we do opening ceremonies in an outdoor setting prior to competition. And it would just may limit our abilities to do the indoor thing. What this does mean, and we'll get to the vaccination side of things when it comes to the basketball season, is that since the Winter Games competition is outdoors and we are not limited to numbers in that range, there's not a vaccination requirement for our Winter Games athletes. And so without that requirement for Winter Games athletes, that is why we're restricted on indoor activities. If there was a vaccination requirement for that, we would be able to do that indoor activity for that number up to 50. But our main focus on making that decision is on the competition side of things, knowing that the additional stuff, well, it's great. It's also something that we could do a competition without. And so for winter games, the vaccination requirement is not there because for outdoor activities, the protocols are lessened since outdoor activities are at lower risk when it comes to COVID. So, so just be patient with us as we will have a plan A for trying to do opening ceremonies and a dance indoors. I would say probably the more likely scenario is that we would do something outdoors from an opening ceremony standpoint. And then we would kind of go from the additional stuff from that standpoint as much as we can to make it a great state games, but also not put the event at a higher risk for that side of things. And so again, the last thing I would say too, and we're working through this, and I appreciate your patience on this. So we are working right now on finalizing the hotel for winter games. Stony Creek, the hotel that we've been at the last few years, is not available for us this year. But fortunately, our connection from Stony Creek is now working for the city of Rothschild and has connected us with another hotel in the area that they're very certain is going to work for us. But once we have those final details, then we'll send those out for programs to be able to start booking within our room block and all of those type of things. And like I said, then once we have that finalized, I'll know what the cancellation policy, and that's going to be what's going to determine our deadline to cancel the event based on numbers. So be patient with us. Hopefully that's something I can send out in the next week or so. But it's just kind of something that has popped up. But it sounds like we have a really good solution for it that we may be pretty happy with. So on that side of things, any questions when it comes to winter games?
Jason, Claudia?
Yeah.
When is winter games, and are they going to run it like they did before, like the pre-running and then have the event like the following day?
Yeah, so at right now, the Winter Games it's February 12th and 13th at 9 Mile, and then the 12th would be when we were doing the alpine and snowboarding over at Granite Peak. Yeah, at this point, as we always kind of go through the planning process, at this point we are planning on running a 2-day competition up there with the prelims and the second day with finals on that.
And is the paperwork or on the website?
It will be up very soon. And we're
Okay.
trying to kind of figure out some of the hotel stuff before it got posted. So I'll answer that question for both sports, winter games and basketball. The hopes is that stuff will be on the website early next week.
Fine, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on winter games? As I said, we can continue to monitor the chat and all that too as well. All right, so moving on to basketball, both team and basketball skills. The plan that we have right now is that we were with numbers, hopefully with numbers cooperating, we plan on running a regional, sectional, and state basketball tournament. I know on the memo that was sent out that included what the plan was for team basketball, what the plan was for the basketball season had included some locations and dates on there. There was a couple that was TBD, and I think we are very close to being those finalized. If not, I think it's just kind of signing on the dotted line at this point. And those should be updated here in the next, I think, Mark, a couple days or so. We should have all that information for dates for that. So for team basketball, like I said, regional, sectional, and state. One other option that we are running is 3v3, and that is just at the state level. So and athletes who participate in 3v3 would have to make the choice to participate in 3v3 at the beginning of the season. They can't go through the team basketball season, the 5v5 basketball season, until they get eliminated and then join a 3v3 team. Just from a planning purposes, we're asking for 3v3 teams to commit at the beginning of the season, but they would advance directly to state competition 3v3. For basketball skills, we're planning to run district basketball skills as well as a state basketball skills, like a normal schedule would be. The addition that we're doing to this is there will be a at practice component for basketball skills. So for in-person competitions for district and state, we are offering level 1 and level 2 basketball skills. For the at practice version, we are offering level 1, level 2, and the newly created level 3 that we added last year. And the idea for the at practice one, for the level, adding level 3 for at practice, is it does allow for athletes who would normally participate in team basketball, who would not, who are not participating because of vaccine reasons or COVID reasons, that they could still participate in an at practice competition. So the at practice competitions, you'll turn in a qualifying score, and with the registration, those athletes will be divisioned against athletes from across the state. And then they will turn in a final score at the final score deadline. And then we will, these deadlines will follow our state basketball skills deadline. So it gives people the most opportunity to get scores in. So we're looking at like the third weekend of March, I believe, for state basketball skills. So we'd collect initial scores towards the beginning of March and collect final scores towards the later part of March. And then we would award those athletes based on the divisions that they are in from across the state. And so I think right now we are offering that as an option for programs if they have individuals that would not be attending in-person competitions for either concern for COVID or for the vaccination requirement, that we're offering that in-practice option for people. I know in the past we had, I see the question of can they do both skills and be on a team. In previous years, we allowed them to do, or last year we allowed them to do both. And I guess I haven't finalized that. What it does allow us to do is it does allow us to get more athletes for divisioning. Mark, I mean, I won't put you on the spot. Do you have a strong feeling either way on that one? We hadn't figured that one out quite yet.
No, we haven't. Give me a night to think about it. To be honest, I'm reluctant to allow just different skill set, and my preference would be to keep them separate. But we can talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah, I put Mark on the spot there. There's pros and cons both ways. One, we want to make that competition special for those who that's their choice for competition for the year. On the other side, if that's a low number, by allowing people to do both, it gives us better divisioning for that, a better skill range. So we'll send a final decision on that in the follow-up here. So I apologize for not having an answer for that one on that side of things. So a reminder for team basketball. So team basketball is considered a contact sport within Special Olympics. In order for contact sports to be allowable within the COVID protocols, they need the counties either need to be in a low risk, the 0 to 10, or a moderate risk, 10 to 15 category, in order for them to do contact sports. And then that would include practicing, and that the contact portion of practicing would be defensive drills, rebounding drills, anything where you have two athletes or two individuals who are going for the same ball. Things like, layups and free throws and some of those passing drills. Some of those things are not non-contact drills, so they would be allowable in the moderate or the high risk numbers. But in order for us to do contact sports, it would have to be in low risk or moderate risk. And so this is kind of where we came to looking at making a decision as far as a vaccine requirement coming for team basketball. In order for us to know that we can have a team basketball season, we are looking at county numbers being at 15 or lower from now until April. The likelihood of that happening, especially with the majority of the counties right now being over 50, didn't seem very likely. Within the guidelines that we received from SOI, if 80% or more people are vaccinated, 80% or more of participants, including athletes, coaches, volunteers, are vaccinated, that allows us to operate in the green low risk category up until that 50 cancellation number. So what we've made the determination for where we would add a vaccine requirement is, can we have the events? If the answer is, can we have the event without the vaccine requirement? The answer is likely no, because we're not going to be over 15, especially across the state. So by adding the vaccine requirement, what that does is gives us a more wiggle room with those numbers up to 50. So if we're able to practice, we're able to practice basketball with the vaccine requirement. And so that's kind of where the decision making came in when it came to state bowling was, could we have the event without it? And with where the numbers were, the answer was no. And so then by adding the vaccine requirement, it does give us more room to run these competitions. Regardless of what the requirement, vaccine or non-vaccine requirement is, if the number is over 50, we're not able to practice, we're not able to do competitions. So it doesn't mean that that the vaccine, by requiring the vaccine, it just throws those numbers out the window. What it does, it just gives us a much wider span to be able to offer this programming. So that's what we determined with team basketball was the likelihood of being under 15 from December through April was very unlikely, but our chances of being under 50 from December through April, or the majority of that, is much more likely, and which is why we made that determination. When it came to basketball skills, and it's kind of the same decision making when it came to for state bowling, was we're restricted if we're any numbers that are over 15 to 50, we're restricted for indoor activities for 50 people maximum. And so we would not be able to do indoor activity athletes, coaches, volunteers, spectators, if they're allowed, all of that stuff would not be in over we couldn't have more than 50 people in those things. And so for state bowling and for basketball skills, that's just not able for us to do that for in-person competitions. And so that's why there's a vaccine requirement that came up for basketball skills and also retroactively for state bowling. So that's kind of where that decision making came in for why we decided to do that. It really came down to our conversation of, can these events happen where with the protocols? And the answer was no, unless we added those vaccine requirements. Then that gave us an entirely different option to be able to do that. So I know that brings up, and I want to bring those things up before I get to some of the questions. Is the reason why I bring that up is then I can talk about protocols in the green low risk category, which we are in with the vaccine requirement. So protocols for low risk would be that for vaccinated individuals, masks would not be required, but they would be recommended. They're recommended on our end. But that is, regardless of if masks required at events, on the court during cardiovascular activities, masks would not be required. So in a situation where we would recommend wearing masks in these situations is that you would have them on the bench when the athletes come off the court. They can put them on there when they're walking around the venues, but on the court, it would not be required, even if there was a mask requirement at an event. And that just kind of always had fallen into the way the protocols have worked in. If we have a mask requirement, like at Winter Games, they would be required to wear them unless they're competing during a race, and they would be able to pull the mask down. So that's the way the protocols have been written and on that type of stuff. But with a green low risk protocol, it's not required. It's recommended. I think we had a majority of people wearing masks at the bowling tournament, even though it wasn't a requirement. And so we appreciate that. The other thing that it gets out is there's no pre-event screening form in low risk category. We obviously would ask people to to not attend if they're not feeling well. That should be something that we continue going on for, whether it's COVID or not. But there would not be the pre-screening that we would have to get turned in. But of course, we would encourage social distancing when possible. So I know as I was talking there, things were lighting up in the chat and hands were going up. And so we're going to do our best to answer some of these questions. Just so you know, I just wanted to give you the answers for why we made the decisions that we have made for that. I know that's asking a lot from a partnership standpoint of knowing that it's another thing to keep track of as we get going forward with these things. And we appreciate your help with that. It's just, this is our best way to be able to offer programming with the protocols and all that type of stuff. So let me take a look. I answered the question about masks with team basketball. Numbers are over 50, which they are. They can't practice even if there's 80% plus vaccinated. That is correct. We've asked for clarification from SOI. 50 is the cutoff time. It's like when we used to go back to phase 0 when we were doing our phasing process. 50 or more for that 7-day average of new confirmed cases per 100,000 people is our cutoff point for participation. And so we will update, and we do our best to update as athletic directors on a weekly basis. When we have that map all figured out, you can check it daily. If we tell you one day you're over 50 and the next day you're at 48, you can practice when you're in 48. Just note that might pop back up over 50 the next day. So it's just, that's why we check it weekly. Otherwise you can go crazy looking at numbers for that type of thing.
Question for you. I got a question.
Go ahead.
You know, with a mask mandate, if it becomes, I know you want me to wait till the end, but Brittany just messaged me. Is one real question real quickly. If the pandemic becomes an endemic, let's just say it's an endemic and cases, is there a way that SOI could boost the, viruses are going to run its course and everything, and it's not going anywhere. I mean, but what I'm trying to say is, could they change that number from 50 before they shut down to 100? Could they go to 100?
So yeah, and I'll answer that question. So we use our guidance on this number. So when we did the phasing process before, it was something that we had kind of looked at and figured out where we felt comfortable with running activities and all that type of stuff. This last update that came out this summer that we're currently following, SOI set those numbers. They worked with public health professionals from on a committee from around the world that they use for that. And that's where those numbers come up. They are continually, just like we always do, we're continuing to look at the protocols and how they reflect what's actually happening. And so SOI, I think we're waiting on an update from them. I don't believe it's going to affect those numbers, but I know they've said that they're working on an update. They're constantly looking at those things. And so if it's one of those things, if their public health professionals feel like the risk is lower than they had originally anticipated at 100, then they can bump that number up. But that's a decision that's being made at a level above Special Olympics Wisconsin at this point. So that kind of answers that. I appreciate you getting clarification on that. Will there be info about the ad practice component on the website level 1, 2, and 3? So yes, levels 1, 2, and 3. We will have the rules as well as we have this great training video that we had a group put together for us last year to kind of demonstrate the skills for those basketball skills. And then we will have a registration form that's specific for ad practice that would include that information for that too. So yeah, we'll have that on the website. Like I said, we're shooting for early next week to have that up. All right, so the question I got are vaccines required for all basketball athletes for practice and for competition? Our vaccine requirement that we're monitoring falls into our in-person competitions, and that would include invitationals. I would say invitationals have to operate at over 80%. The easiest way to do that, similar to what we're doing for in-person competitions, is to have the vaccines required. And then also that way you have athletes participating in the invitational games that are going to be participating at the in-person competitions. If your program has 80% or more that are vaccinated, 80% or more that are vaccinated, you could have athletes who are not vaccinated at practice or a coach who's not vaccinated at practice. I've had that question before. I have a coach that would love to coach. they're not vaccinated. They would not attend in-person competition. Could they attend practices? With the protocols, if everybody else is over, if everybody is over 80%, including that coach is not being one of those that are vaccinated, they can be involved at practice. The thing is, if you're practicing and you're scrimmaging with athletes who are not going to participate in in-person competition, when you get to registration for in-person competition, it does throw off the way we division, knowing that you played with an athlete that's not going to be attending those games. So if it's it's one of those situations, if you go ahead and say, well, you'd like to get them in there and we're going to scrimmage with these teams, it's going to fit within this 80%, then let's do it. And they're one of your better players, you're going to be divisioned as if you have that player, even if they're not going to be able to compete. So that's just something to think about when you're looking at those things. But for basketball, that's part of the reason why we have at practice basketball skills, is that you could do at practice or basketball skills as long as you're under 50 people at that practice. And so that's where it makes it a little bit more manageable for programs who are not going to come to in-person competitions. You can run an at practice basketball skills without having to worry about the vaccine requirement, because that requirement, for basketball skills, the issue that we have is the 50 people is our maximum for being able to come do some of those things. And I think you're answering some of those questions. Don just told me everything in the chat has been answered, so late to the party on that.
There's one question that just came in though. Will there be an opportunity to participate in winter games virtually if our county is over the 50 rate?
So the issue we have, because we talked about that with some of the programs that were unfortunately not able to come to Southern State Bowling. I know Northern State Bowling did something virtually with theirs, is that it would be, if we did it virtually, if the county is over 50, the problem is you can't practice. And so those times would have to be taken by the athlete doing an individual on their own day out doing, snowshoeing or cross country skiing. So I really don't think virtually is really going to be an option for the case where we would cancel winter games or not allow a program to come, because they would not be able to practice to collect those scores. So that would be a problem for that type of stuff. So, but it's certainly something we can look at if there's enough programs who are interested in just doing virtual competition without coming to the games. Regardless of canceling, we can look into offering something for that. I just don't think we have a pool for that. If it's going to be, one or two programs, we just wouldn't have enough people to division with. And like I said, if it's over 50, then there's no practices, so it's a little bit harder to collect that information. Basketball, I had another one that wasn't in the group chat, but asking about location. So for basketball skills. So basketball skills will be similar to that. You'll have a district competition, and then the state competition will be in Neenah in the third week of March. And then team basketball, we are still planning on doing a regional basketball. Sectional basketball, we have a northern and a southern one, and then the state basketball tournament at UW Oshkosh in April. So that is still the plan for those locations. We have those venues booked to being able to do those type of things. Brenda had put in there about something about boosters. At this point, we have not gotten guidance for including boosters. Don, I don't know if you've heard anything differently. Part of it is we're also working with age groups that have just recently been, you talk about under 18, the time frame for when people have been able to get vaccinated. They may not have enough time to get boosters at this point. I will also clarify, just because of the time frame, I know we did just get approved for those under 12 to get vaccinated, but with the time frame that we have to get fully vaccinated and for the basketball season, we are still allowing an exemption for the 8 to 11-year-old group. And that's just because while it is fully approved, there is a time frame factor for being able to get both boosters or get both vaccinations for the 2-shot vaccinations, and then also have a 2-week period to be able to participate in some of those things. So that's why we've made an exception for that last group that just recently got approved to get vaccinated. So right now there's not a booster requirement. We would keep that updated. That again would be something we would get guidance from Special Olympics Incorporated. But we are looking for the vaccine required would be fully vaccinated. For a similar answer that we had for bowling for medical and religious exemptions for the vaccination requirement is that we are offering that at practice option that the in-person competitions are considered optional. So at this point, we are not offering exemptions for those things at this point for vaccines. So we'll get to the games requirement in a second here. The dates and locations will be on the website. They were also located, there were some of them that were located on the memo that went out to for the basketball season update, which included the vaccine requirement. That there were some dates and stuff for that, but we'll definitely have those, and we should have our dates finalized here in the next week or so too for the ones that we didn't have on that memo. The question about, is there ways we can watch trends from last year? That actually is going to be something that's going to be to our benefit, and that's what I was going to get to too. So we're looking at, I know a lot of people are saying, you know, you want to know an idea for when we know if we're definitely on or definitely off. We're going to wait till January 28th to make any major decisions when it comes to basketball. Part of that reason was when we watched last year's trends, the first few weeks of January where some of the spikes were, and then things kind of came down. And again, I think a lot of that had to do with holiday travel, indoor activities, gatherings of larger gatherings based on holidays and all that type of stuff. So January 28th is when we're going to make any of our major decisions when it comes to team basketball or basketball skills. And those decisions could be looking at what we have to do if we have to cancel all or portion of the basketball season. We have back, plan A, plan B, plan C, like we have for the last year and a half. But that's part of the reason why we want to wait till as late as possible to make that determination. We had a similar dilemma when it came to flag football, and when we pulled the local programs at that point, they basically had asked us to wait as long as possible to make that call, just because it gave us the best opportunity to host something. So we're going to do that for both team and basketball skills. January 28th, we'll have a powwow to figure out if we have to make any adjustments to our season or if we're looking good to go for that time point. We are still looking at having a 2-game scrimmage requirement. So that could include teams contacting each other and scheduling a game at practice or going to invitationals. I know there's some of the invitational options are not going to happen or might be limited to sizing based on what the programs are running those things. If it really becomes an issue and you've tried everything you can, contact your athletic director, and we will do our best to work with people on what we're doing with that. The big part, especially this year, we found this with soccer, and we found this when we were trying to division like football, is that with the number of participants, there are a lot of mixing of athletes that would be normally on different teams. So these scrimmages really do help us with divisioning. If we use historical data, that may not be the best case for something like this year. And so that's so we are requiring the 2-game scrimmage. But again, if there's a problem getting those and you've tried everything you can, reach out to the athletic director and we'll try to look at solutions or figure out what we can do with that type of stuff.
Jason, and another reason for that, it's been a couple of years since we've played. So the old data is difficult. So yeah, just give us a call and we'll talk through it and looking at it. But since we've have a whole missed year, it just it makes it difficult to use historical data. Yeah, absolutely. Somebody asked about how do they get on the email for the memo list. The memos were sent out to local program managers. And so that was just our list that we had used and typically what we've gone with for some of these larger memos. So we go through the local program manager, and then we just ask that local program manager share that information out for some of those type of things. We were asked about the intent to play list. So we extended our collection of intent to play. We were kind of slow on getting those in. So we have got a majority of those in right now. Those are entered in and all that type of stuff. I will send it out to ADs tomorrow to send out to their local programs. If you have not sent in your intent to play, please do that
ASAP so we can include you on that list. My assumption is we might get a couple more and we'll send an updated list in another week or so. But I do want to get those out so people can start contacting and doing scrimmages. The question came up, are we allowed to set up scrimmages prior to January 28th? The answer to that is yes. I know Michaela, the Region 2-3 basketball happens pretty quickly there in February, so it'd be difficult not to be able to do that. But just remember that during those scrimmages that you have to be in that green or yellow category in order to have them, and that if you're over 50, that we would not be able to have it during that time frame because we would be shut down for practices, and it would include scrimmages. And that would include either program that would participate in that scrimmage. If you people coming across county lines, both programs would have to be underneath that 50 number in order to participate, not just the host one. So Bill had also asked about where will we receive information about invitationals in our area. I know typically the invitationals have a mailing list, and then we'll use our intent to play to send those out. If you have not heard of anything, I would just recommend reaching out to your athletic director because they typically have the information for that and they can send it on to you. It's probably our best bet. It's the invitationals are hosted by local programs, and then they may not have the same contact information that we do. So sometimes there is a little bit of a gap in that. So if you have not received anything, one that you normally participate in, or if you want to figure out if there's any other ones that you don't know about, reach out to your athletic director, and that's probably going to be your best bet to finding out the information for some of those. Okay, I think I flew through the chat on some of that stuff. That's, I'm trying to think about anything else I had on my list for the agenda on that type of thing. I think that's what I had at the bottom of my agenda list, so I can open up to you for any more questions that we have going forward to this. And then before I jump into actually do that, Brittany, can you enter in the chat that if you have any additional questions moving forward, please feel free to email to the COVID@SpecialOlympicsWisconsin.org email address. Brittany will put that in the chat here for us. It's monitored by multiple of us on staff to be able to answer that as quickly as we can, especially now around the end of the year here where people are taking vacations. Or as always, myself and Don and the ADs can try to answer your questions as best as possible, or refer you to the person who might be able to answer it as best as possible too. So any additional questions? I know we've gone through a bunch. Annette, I see you. Go ahead.
Okay. I have an athlete, a brand new athlete that wants to come over basketball, but he's not vaccinated. Now, there is the in-practice competition. Is that just your skill level things that we could send it? Or what is the in-practice option?
Yeah, so the in-practice options, we have level 1 and level 2, which is as typical basketball skills. And then we created last year we created a level 3 skills that's intended more for a team basketball. So that would be the option for any team basketball person would be doing an individual skill set, which would be our level 3 basketball skills.
So would I have to just take the kids that aren't vaccinated and do another practice? Because I do team basketball. So
at the same time, you're saying?
Either at the same time or maybe behind each other. I don't know.
Sure.
I mean,
sure. So the question comes up is you could do them at the same time if with the athletes who are not vaccinated and the totals of the athletes who are vaccinated, if over 80% or more are vaccinated in that combined group, you could run them at the same time. That's the 80% that threshold. If it's not, you could run something where it would be you do team basketball followed by basketball skills or vice versa. Just knowing that during that team basketball portion, you would be at over 80% because that's a contact sport. Does that make sense?
yeah, it does.
Okay. Jake had asked about Team Wisconsin at IST. Mark, I don't know if you had any additional plans for Team Wisconsin at IST. Typically, we've invited Team Wisconsin athletes for the state games at the sport they compete in, which we had state bowlers, but we're not bringing basketball this time around. Mark, did you have anything that you're looking at for IST?
At this point, we have not explored that. There were some other things that are a little bit more pressing, but that is on our discussion agenda as to how we want to utilize that. So as we get closer, I would say more the beginning of March, we'll have a better idea as to what direction we're going to take.
Yeah, that sounds good. Like I said, typically it's been the sport that they compete in. And then normally it had worked out with the summer games to be able to do that right before send off or something like that. But so IST typically hadn't been one of those, but I guess, like Mark said, we'll fill that in as we kind of keep going with that. Any additional
Jason?
questions? Yep.
Yes, Jason, I do. Okay, you said a whole lot, and I guess I'm more confused than anybody. I can tell by the chats. So you said 5 versus 5 are not going to state, but the
Nope.
3, no.
No, so 5 versus 5 is going to go through the normal process of going to regionals and advancing to sectionals and then advancing to state. Where 3v3, we're only offering at state, so they directly advance.
Okay,
Does that make that clear it up?
so what happens if you just I mean, I'm confused with the 5 and 5 and 3 and 3. So you can't have more than 5 players?
No, sorry. So when I talk 5v5, that's what you traditionally think about for team basketball. 5 players on the court at a time. So you 5
Okay,
up to 12. The 3v3 is an additional type of basketball that we've recently introduced. It's 3 players on a court. It's half court. And so that's just, it's almost like somebody doing differently between like basketball skills and team basketball. It's being treated kind of in a similar way, but we're only offering 3v3 at state.
okay, so the 5v5e is like regular team basketball, and then the 3v3 is only offered at state. So if they're going to do one or the other.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry. 5v5 is something that we typically throw around, and I apologize for the confusion on that. Yes, 5v5 is what we traditionally think about when it comes to team basketball. 5 players on a court. When we talk about numbers, it's the number of people on the playing field at one time. So I apologize for not having
Thank
that.
like I said, you covered an awful lot, and I'm going to sort it out. If I got questions, I'll call Amber.
Please do. Yeah, and not to mention, it doesn't help that I'm adding numbers into it either, right?
Exactly. Thank you, Jason.
Yep. So the question got brought up about spectators. So we did with the vaccination requirement, we did allow spectators at state polling. We did have a requirement for showing a proof of vaccination when they checked in. Just the thought process behind that again is that we have to monitor that number of 80%, and we had limited it to 2 spectators per athlete. But if we had 2 spectators per athlete and none of them were vaccinated, it would throw off our numbers to be below 80%. And so that's what we did. It went relatively smoothly at state. I know there's Don was over there, and as well as one of our interns, and Nicole was there at some point. The check-in process was just signing in, saying what program you're with, showing a proof of vaccination, and then you got a wristband and we're able to go into the event. And so something similar will probably be done at our basketball events where there's a vaccine requirement. Mark, unified 3v3.
Yes, we're going to do both a traditional 3v3 and unified 3v3. So we'll be able to division them differently. One of the things we're looking at working with the schools as well, there may be an adult version and there may be the schools version. So yes, we're offering both options.
Right now, when I looked at the intent to plays that have come in, we have about a handful in both 3v3s, unified and traditional 3v3.
Yes.
Next question that came is, how do you choose what 20% of athletes who are unvaccinated get to competition? So that's why we don't have that wiggle room on when we don't add that 20% of who gets to come to unvaccinated gets to come to competition. We have the vaccine requirement because that's what makes things manageable. I think I've tried to have some conversations about this. That if we were to say, okay, everybody's at 80% vaccinated for your teams, and everybody can have a wiggle room of 20%. If we get to competition, and a percentage of the athletes who are scratches, which we always have people who aren't able to make competitions that who are registered. If they are all vaccinated, that would put us below the 80% number, and then that would make it so we would have to then not offer that event because we would be out of compliance for our protocols. So that's why that's part of the reason why there's that vaccine requirement for all participants coming into our competitions. And we've been doing something similar for when it comes to that's why we've had it for not only athletes but coaches, spectators. We're trying to keep that as consistent as possible across the board, rather than trying to play a guessing game of if we're 80% if we're not over 80%. So that's why it's one of those things as far as that 20% range. Yes, 80% is our minimum requirement, but we've just, in a way to make things manageable, we just made it so it's consistent across the board for everybody. Mike, I know you're sending me, Mike Shields is sending me some direct messages. Just touch base with Michaela. She'll be able to let you know the answer on that one. Sorry. So, anything else? I know it's a lot of numbers, a lot of information.
Hi, Jason, it's Sam. Sorry, I just wanted to go backwards a little bit.
Yeah.
The medical deadline for Winter Games is actually January 15th.
Sorry, January 15th. I don't know where I got February 1st from. Maybe that's team basketball.
That is basketball.
There it is. Sorry.
That's okay. I thought you had changed it. So there was a lot of communication going on between me, Don, and Nicole saying,
Like, what's going on?
What's the date? Did Jason do something and not tell me?
I apologize. It's been yeah.
It's been a week.
January 15th. It typically, I believe it used to be December 1st was a previous deadline. So we are extending it to January 15th. I apologize for throwing February 1st out there. February 1st is basketball. January 15th is Winter Games.
Hey, Jason, I got one more question.
Yeah.
At Center's putting the vaccine on the website. Now, we have Sanctuary kids like in group homes and stuff like that. As coaches, can we put that, if we get a copy of their vaccination card, can we put that stuff in there for them?
Yeah,
Or is that breaking the rules?
We've had situations that people will say, okay, we're gonna check vaccine. Like if we're gonna start basketball practice, week one of basketball practice, you can bring the vaccine card in. We'll have a coach designated to entering the information in, and just being able to do it so you know it's done. Otherwise, people can do it on their own. I think we had a situation where we've had a staff come out and assist in some situations if we're available. We do want to make the process as easy as we can for that. So if that's something that the athletes, families and staff are comfortable with, that's certainly something that can be done.
Okay.
One more question I've got for you. One more final question. Are we going to be able to have an unlimited amount of fans? Because I noticed a lot of organizations that are having unlimited fans, and I know we got a limit of 2 people per person. I think that, of course, the viruses are going to run their course and whatnot, but a lot of people have wanted us to have, we need our fans too. And I know that you got your rules and your regulations, and I respect them and all that. And I think that we should have we need our fans just like any other organization does.
Yeah. And we're kind of looking at that based on the venues we have and the areas that we're spectators would be. I mean, the biggest thing that the protocols give us our guidelines is a designated spectator area that's separate from competition. And we knew when we looked at bowling, there's just not that the way bowling alleys are set up. That's just not a way to do that. But with some of our basketball venues, it's similar. But as we continue to go on, especially as we get outdoors and you think about track or something like that, where the bleachers are completely set off, that's when we would look at what's manageable for us to be able to get people to come into the competition. So, yeah, and as Nicole had pointed out, if you have already submitted a vaccine card for bowling or anything like that, you would not need to resubmit it. It's already in our system. It does not need to be updated season to season. It's just once it's in, it's in. So, Yeah, and like I said, and there was the additional comment there, and like I said, we're at a point where it's just going to be we had to come to a decision point of whether we offer or don't offer competitions at this point, and if we're offering them, we do have to fall within the guidelines of SOI, and as well as that we've determined being consistent on it. So we will have the memo that went up. Return to play is a good spot to look for on our website. The memo that we sent out for bowling has been up for the bowling site. The one that we sent out for basketball will also be included on the basketball page once that's all updated. So we're going to try to keep the information close to where the sport information would be in a typical year. And so that would include that. And then we will make sure we get that link to where you can submit the proof of vaccination as clearly marked as possible in all of those places as well. All right. I appreciate everybody taking time to come on tonight and go over these details. I know, like Claudia said, there's a lot of information and a lot of numbers and a lot of things going in. If you take some time to go through any notes or what you've gathered from this evening, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the COVID@SpecialOlympicsWisconsin.org email address. Reach out to myself or Don or the athletic directors. We'll be willing to help out and answer some of those questions if we keep going. We want to, again, try to make this, try to simplify it, make it as easy as possible for everybody so we can get together and be a part at in-person competitions and that practice to go smoothly and offer in a very safe way. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. We will, once we get through a portion of basketball season, we will have another coaches meeting, a seasonal meeting for the summer game season for tracks, soccer, and swim. I will send that information out. We'll have people send out that information once that date is booked. So thanks, everybody. Have a great night. And again, thank you again for your time.
Thanks, Jason, and all the